Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
We know that talent is distributed equally. And so what's the thing that's not is opportunity, access, and exposure. And so those are the systems that when you talk about women representation or any type of representation, we'll do better if everyone has an equitable opportunity to join, belong, contribute, and progress.
That was Vivian Greentree, SVP and Head of Global Corporate Citizenship at Fiserv, and she is our special guest on the 104th episode of the Leaders in Payments podcast. This is also the 5th episode this month as we're celebrating Women Leaders in Payments Month, sponsored by American Express. Vivian grew up in Tucker, Georgia, and after high school attended the University of Georgia and then joined the Navy, where she was a Naval Supply Officer. In 2009, she co-founded Blue Star Families, which is the nation's largest military family organization with 65,000 members. She joined First Data in 2014 as the head of Military and Veteran Affairs, and today, as the head of Global Corporate Citizenship at Fiserv, she manages all efforts around associate and community engagement, strategic philanthropy, diversity, and inclusion. Vivian and I talk about always being vulnerable, willing to learn, and getting comfortable being uncomfortable. The underlying theme of Vivian's advice is resiliency, or as we like to say in the South, grit. We've got a great episode ahead, so let's get started. Hi, Vivian, and welcome to episode 104 of the Leaders in Payments podcast, and more specifically, the 5th episode in our special Women Leaders in Payments Month, sponsored by American Express. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about Fiserv and your current role. Can you tell us a little bit there? And then we'll rewind and go back and talk about your journey and how you got there.
Fiserv is a global leader in payments and financial technology. We help clients in areas around account processing, digital banking solutions, card processing, network services, e-commerce, and then, of course, our SMBs through our Clover point of sale platform. But what that really means is when you think of any aspect of your day, financial life, we are where commerce is at. If you have a debit card in your pocket, if you go to the store and swipe your card, more increasingly as people have been buying online or on your phone or even in your car, Fiserv makes that happen every day.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your current role there?
Sure. So my role as head of global corporate citizenship is really to create shared value. We really have a global platform. We're one of the largest fintechs in the world. We like to think the best, and we really want to do well while we're doing good. I lead our corporate citizenship efforts, focusing on associate and community engagement, strategic philanthropy, and diversity and inclusion, because we know that those areas, when coordinated and aligned, create these high-performing teams where everyone can say, I'm a valued member of a winning team doing meaningful work in an environment of trust, because we are technology-driven, but we'll always be people-powered. And so we want to ensure purpose is built into our missions, the first best use of our resources as we drive employee engagement, that we're also ensuring diversity and inclusion is really integrated into our DNA so that everyone feels like they're on the journey together, empowered, engaged, and ready to help us lead into the future.
Where did you grow up and what was your life like growing up?
So I grew up in Tucker, Georgia, which has grown significantly since then. We have a mayor now and a brewery, which seems to be the two indicators, right, of towns turning into cities. And after I went to high school and college in Georgia, I joined the Navy. And so I've been able to actually come back to Georgia in the Tucker area, actually, for the first time, as the Navy hasn't been telling us where to live.
Did you know when you were growing up what you wanted to be?
You know, I knew I wanted to be in the Navy. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in the Navy, but I grew up in a very service-oriented household. So it was either police officers or joining the Navy. I chose the Navy because I thought that would get me to be able to see the world. Isn't it funny to choose to come back to your hometown less than 14 miles?
Full circle.
Total full circle. But excited, again, like the first time to be able to choose where to live in about 20 years. And I chose to come home to the very town I was trying to leave.
Oh, that's funny. So let's see if I have the timeline right. After high school, you went to Georgia and then you joined the Navy. Is that correct?
I did. So right when I was graduating high school was when the state was creating the Hope Scholarship, which really just followed, I think, in the grand tradition. The University of Georgia is actually, I'm very proud to be an alum. You'll see, I'll probably bring it up 5 times. But, the University of Georgia is the original land grant university for the country. It's the birthplace of public higher education. And at the same time, the Hope Scholarship allowed more students, that I couldn't have hoped to have attended college there otherwise. Just the cost kind of expanded the ability for Georgia students to go to universities like the University of Georgia or Emory or Georgia Tech. And I do think that played a role in the idea of kind of the responsibility to give back or to expand opportunities for others just throughout my career since then, because I achieved I was able to go to school through public support. And a core pillar of the University of Georgia is giving back in community service because it's a land grant university.
I'll just warn you, I went to Auburn, so...
You know what's so funny, Greg? My oldest son wants to go to Auburn.
It's an amazing school. He should go. Absolutely.
He is. He wants to go. We visited the campus. Listen, if Georgia's not playing Auburn, I will root for Auburn.
There you go. I wish I could say the same.
Oh, no.
No, just kidding. Okay, so after college, I assume, is when you joined the Navy. So you must have someone in your family that was in the Navy?
Yes, I have service members on both sides of my family. And so just the idea of getting to see the world, serving your country, I think had a lot to do with wanting to join the Navy. I went to Supply Corps school, which funnily enough is in Athens or was in Athens at the time. It's since moved. And so I graduated from the University of Georgia and then went right back to Athens to go through Navy Supply Corps school.
And do you feel as though you learned a lot about leadership by being in the Navy?
Being in the Navy and then being a military spouse, my husband actually just retired after 20 years, but being military affiliated, kind of growing up in the military community and then having children while my husband was deployed, he deployed 5 times. It enriches and enlarges your life in a way that I don't think any other experience does, because you are thrust in positions, with limited information, have to make decisions quickly. You really do understand that you are only as strong as your weakest link. And diversity is, in fact, inclusion is a choice. All these life lessons you learn very early on. And I think it does impact service members, veterans, their spouses, and their children in a way that is very positive and that hopefully they're able to take into whatever organizations they go into, communities they go back to as they have their after-service life.
Right. Okay. So we're going to pivot away from your career for just a minute, and I'm going to ask you what I call some rapid fire questions. And where possible, give 1-word answers. It doesn't mean you have to, but where possible. And just a little kind of a fun little 10 questions here to help us all get to know you a little better. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
What was your least favorite subject in high school?
Chemistry.
What is your favorite board game?
Clue.
Oh, I love it. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
To fly.
Team iOS or Team Android?
iOS.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Right now, TikTok. Followed very closely by iMessage to send the TikToks.
Okay. If you could time travel, what period of time would you go to?
One answer. Right now, we know the most that we've ever known. We're in an inflection point. The things that we do now will have impact generations to come. So long story short, I'd stay right now.
Okay. Dog or cat?
Both. All the animals. All of them.
Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to speak with animals?
I think maybe speak with animals.
Okay.
Reference question above.
Right. Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Oh, gosh. Is it too cliche to say like Julia Roberts, Trisha Yearwood? They're both Georgia girls. Steel Magnolias. That I really identify. Or Julia Sugarbaker from Designing Women, right?
Okay. Vanilla or chocolate?
I'm going to both. Why do you have to choose?
Great answer. Okay. Thank you so much for playing along. That was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you doing that. So we always have a good time during that part, getting to know the guests a little bit. So let's jump back into your career a little bit and start getting into sort of the women leadership aspect and researching sort of your background. Obviously working at a very large company, probably Fortune 100 company, but you also co-founded an organization called Blue Star Families, which is the nation's largest military family organization with like 65,000 members. So Can you talk a little bit about that journey, how you found it, why did you do that, and kind of what you learned through that process?
Sure. It started out as military spouses who wanted to support, connect, and empower military families. Because at the time, we were really concerned with the impact of repeated deployments and just kind of a lack of data about the impact of service on military families, regardless of what branch you were in or what state you lived in or what level, if you were active or reserve, officer, enlisted, and wanted to capture kind of the experience of modern day military families, really so that we could give information and data back to policymakers, military leaders to say, this is the impact of service. And if you want to have a sustainable all volunteer force, you have to have successive generations who want to volunteer. It was kind of like 3 steps removed to say, there were areas that military families needed support in around military spouse employment or military child education, or just the effects and impact of deployments on military relationships. And so we built our mission really around that support, connect, and empowering military families and meeting them where they're at.
Okay. And that organization is still around today, correct?
Yes. And I mean, bigger than ever and continues to pump out programming, partnerships, and our annual military family survey that we created to create that one place source for data where we could present both anecdotal and data-driven picture of what the modern military family experiences and how government, private, public communities could support them.
After that, I assume about 7 years ago, you joined First Data. So can you talk about when you came into First Data, your roles and responsibilities then versus sort of where they are today?
Sure. At that time, I came on to First Data, which is, being from Georgia, I was a military family advocate. And, the SEC to me was SEC football. And even now today, when people say the SEC, I really need to clarify, is that the Securities Exchange Commission or are we talking about football? But I bring that up laughingly just to say it was somebody who was on the private sector side that saw in me something that said, you can take what you have, your systems thinking, your connection to the military community, and bring that to the private sector side and be of value to us as we build our military program. Because the players, what the mission is. And I really have ever since then tried to earn that kind of opportunity that I was given by turning around and creating opportunity, exposure, access for others who might not see themselves at a Fortune 500 in a leadership role. I think it goes back to that going to a land-grant university on a publicly funded scholarship, and then even being in the Navy, getting paid by the taxpayers and really wanting to earn the opportunities that I've been given. And I feel very blessed and lucky and honored that I'm able to do that and get paid for it.
So is today sort of the military affairs type of role, is that under you in your current role?
It is. So as we built our First Data Salutes, which is now Fiserv Salutes programming, it really changed the way we looked at human capital management or even engagement with small businesses. Because as we thought, we want to recruit veterans and military spouses, you can't just show up on installations and you don't really recruit, a veteran to one specific position because they're kind of, we call them silver medalists, right? Because they can fit in a lot of different areas. It's not just, it's the technical skills, but it's the soft skills. It's the esprit de corps, the Marines would call it, where it's systems thinking, technology driven, but mission oriented that could fit into a lot of different family of businesses that we have, but showing up authentically with genuine concern. Understanding that it's also, the HR policies, once we recruit them, retain them. So making sure that our Guard and Reserve policy was up to date and expansive. And I'm very proud of that. I think we have one of the most expansive Guard and Reserve policies in the country. And I would love to be proved wrong. And then we'll create a more expansive policy because we didn't want to make Guard and Reservists choose between serving their country or working at First Data, because the company that does that loses. It actually helped us build our entire diversity and inclusion programming and portfolio because it was so on and so forth. For women, paid parental leave, don't make people choose between starting their families and working at your company because ultimately you won't get the best of them, their most innovative, authentic, creative selves because they're worried about some other thing. And so it just changed the way we looked at total employer value proposition, I think for the better. And also the military communities, is the most diverse community in the country because of the intersectionality. It's geographic, it's racial, it's ethnic, it's gender, it's LGBTQ, it's the swath of America. And so it changed the way we looked at things and then has driven also, authentically engaging community groups that we want to recruit from. And so building out our employee engagement, our strategic philanthropy, and again, small diverse businesses. When we think about wanting to serve small diverse businesses, we serve all small businesses. We have a special commitment to ensure that we are using our space and place to increase opportunity, access, and exposure for all. And to do that, you really have to have internal representation. You need to have people who are meaningfully engaged so that you get the first best use of their brain power, and so that they really do feel empowered to do not just their job, but so much more than that.
Hey, this is your host, Greg Myers, and I'd like to take a quick minute to thank American Express for being the sponsor of the Women Leaders in Payments Month. American Express is a globally integrated payments company that provides customers with access to products, insights, and experiences that enrich lives and build business success. Again, thank you, American Express. And now back to the show. So it's very obvious to me, at least from your being in the Navy and starting a successful organization that's still running today to your position at Fiserv now, that you've been very successful throughout your career. So what do you say are your guiding principles?
Definitely systems thinking and a think big, act small, move quick mentality, because there's endless passion, endless purpose. But I think to me, that's the persistence, the grit, I guess. In the South, we would call it grit. I think everyone else would call it resiliency.
Right.
Just that grit to be able to pick yourself up and just keep going, because that's really, these huge changes do not happen overnight. It happens by changing systems. Changing systems over time, it takes passion and it takes purpose. But I think for me, the thing that brings it all together is that persistence.
This next question is kind of a two-part question. The first part is about inspiration, and the second part's about mentorship. So who inspired you along the way, and how did they inspire you? So that's kind of the first part. And then the second is about mentorship. Do you have a mentor today? Do you have a view on, especially females in the workforce and having mentors? So let's talk about inspiration first. So who has inspired you along the way, and how have they inspired you?
So many. It's like when I was younger, it would definitely start with my mom. She was one of the first women police officers in Atlanta, moved up through the Board of Pardons and Paroles. And really, as a single mom, she still managed to be room mom. And I remember her telling me when I was younger, because I have 2 boys now, she would tell me, Vivian, you're going to be in rooms that I'll never be in. And so just remember to take your mom. When I was young, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. How would I take my mom? And why would I take my mom? And now I know, though, I am in rooms that she has never been in. But because of the opportunities and work that, she did to get me where I am, and so many other people, right? And I tell my boys, that I'm raising, they're having opportunities that, I haven't had. And I say to them, bring your mom in the room. And they're probably doing the same thing to me. Like, why would I bring you in this room? But I know that when it gets to the point, they'll know what that means, and they will. They'll look around and like, who's not in the room? Who should be in the room? What are we trying to accomplish? And how can it be done better by having more people who don't look like me in the room?
Beside your mom, any other people of inspiration?
Now, I look around at military spouses who have created opportunities, or anyone who really uses their space and place to increase kind of the aperture. If there's not a chair at the table, bringing one. Even just this morning, I got to meet someone who I have known about for a while because of the work she was doing with women coming back into the workforce. Allison O'Kelly, who's founded Mom Corp, which is now the Core team. I met her for coffee this morning, finally, after like years of following her and being connected now that we're both back in the Atlanta area. And so people like that inspire me for what she's doing to increase opportunity access for others. And then that kind of slides into like mentors or circles of champions, because I think just being in the area of diversity and inclusion, get to see people and social entrepreneurship, see people every day who start things and kind of use all of the capital that they have, whether it's social capital, financial capital, to create these either national programs, or they start their own businesses that serve a purpose past that direct return on investment, return on inclusion. And then there are a lot of male allies. One of my mentors is actually the man who offered me the position to come over from the nonprofit side to start the First Aid Salutes programming. And he has championed me in rooms that I'm not in. He has given me responsibility and authority and put trust in me to build these programs in a way that I definitely, again, look to earn by turning around and doing the same for others.
Do you think there's one Or what is one characteristic that you believe every woman leader should possess?
I don't know that there's any one characteristic. I think, I said the passion, purpose, but for me, it's that persistence. It's that grit. I think women have to have that grit and resilience. And really everyone would do good to be able to overcome and come out stronger because of challenges that they face. I am a woman, so I know, there are tangible obstacles and challenges that women face. And then if you overlay intersectionality with women of color and even additional obstacles, that persistence comes in. And I used to say, fake it till you make it. And I still say that. I would still give that advice. If you don't think you should be in the room or you're wondering how you got in the room, act like you should be there. But I do understand even now the evolution of my thinking is once you have made it or you get to the part where you feel like you are comfortable holding the door open for others and making it easier so that the next generation doesn't have to fake it, because it puts a lot of onus, when you say fake it till you make it, it puts a lot of onus on the person to change the system, when I'm hoping that when you have power and you can use it to extend power to others so they don't have to fake it, because it does, I think, take just an additional mental toll that whatever organization you're in, it takes the toll away from, the ability to be the most effective, to have the high performing teams, to be vulnerable, because, progress really does move at the speed of trust.
What do you do to make sure that you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
One, as being a mom, right? Because your kids always tell you the things that you don't know and how far behind you are in all of the lingo. That's why I'm on TikTok, honestly. Always be willing to learn and be vulnerable. We'll never be at a place, or at least I, will never be at a place where I will feel confident in saying, I've learned enough. So I'm done with that. And I think that that's just being vulnerable and willing to admit that you don't know everything. And there's always more to learn. There's always someone who's smarter than you, and be willing to revel in that and learn from them.
This next question, so the way I kind of like to frame it is, I feel like, especially in payments, obviously the reason we're having this whole series is to highlight successful women leaders in payments and help provide a path and understanding of their journeys and advice that they can provide to the next generation of leaders. I feel as though there's a lot of great potential leaders in that kind of mid-managerial level, maybe, VP level, but they're ready to step up to the next level. And I feel like sort of the advice for them is a little different than people just starting their careers. So thinking about those type of people, what would you say is your advice to them that would help them to be more successful in their careers?
So the SEALs have a very good mantra of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And of course, that's more like cold water and holding your breath. But I think that is such good advice, because it's building up that tolerance, that grit for getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And if that is taking on new projects or leaning into speaking up in a meeting, I think that it's that get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because if you're comfortable, that actually to me means you're not learning, you're not stretching, you're not growing. It's kind of like that butterfly analogy. And I think that that's where the persistence comes in, because it does take grit and resilience to be uncomfortable and charge forth anyway. I would also say to start that IRA or do that 401k, invest, because you can't save yourself into wealth. I would like to see more conversations of financial literacy and wellness and building that generational wealth, because we know, even with women entrepreneurs, they're less likely to receive traditional means of capital. If there was advice to the next generation around that, it's speak clearly and learn, be curious about investing and saving and how to create wealth for yourself.
How do you think we're doing as a industry, payments, fintech, kind of lump them together when it comes to having female leaders and leadership type positions? How do you think we're doing as an industry?
So this one, I talk about it with my boys all the time, because I do have two boys. So I have to raise feminists. So I have feminists, even boy feminists, male allies. And I remember I talked to them about regular distribution of talent and populations. And if you look at the Fortune 500, fintech, or whether payments, public, private, nonprofit, academia, even, no matter what industry, what geography, but women are 50% of the population. And so unless women are represented at the 50% level, within every region, within every industry, there's underrepresentation there. And then if you look at Fortune 500, it narrows even more. And of course, if you lay on other demographics, we know that talent is distributed equally. And so what's the thing that's not is opportunity, access, and exposure. And so those are the systems that when you talk about women representation or any type of representation, we'll do better if everyone has an equitable opportunity to join, belong, contribute, and progress, whether that's communities, companies, writ large.
I love that thought, and I haven't heard it put that way, that talent is distributed, but opportunity is what's not. That's very thought-provoking, actually. What's one thing that you know now about work in your career that you wish you had known earlier on?
Greg, so much. so much I wish younger Viv knew. I think 90% is showing up. It is leaning into being uncomfortable. I think nobody knows everything that they're doing, but those people that lean into that stretching and growing, being able to be wrong. I think coming from a large family that was constantly talking, like thinking I had to always be right or have the final word, that is definitely something I've lost over the years because it's wanting to find the best solution, regardless of who comes up with it. And whether that's you or someone on your team or even whoever has the best solution, it's like, if you're really trying to serve a population, that has to be the goal.
Sure. So this next question, which is actually my final question, I'm stealing it from another podcast host. He always asks this at the end of his podcast. It's Guy Raz, who has a podcast on NPR called How I Built This. So I'm giving him full credit for the question. How much of your success do you attribute to hard work versus luck?
I love that question. I actually think the harder you work, the luckier you are, and that you expand your surface area for luck by hard work. It's not either or. I'm going to have to go with both, Alex. I think the harder you work, the luckier you are.
Okay. I love that answer. So, Vivian, we've covered a lot of ground about you and your journey and Fiserv and your thoughts on women leadership. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
It just comes back to inclusion starts with I for a reason, because we can take individual actions every single day. And we are in an inflection point, not just, in the country, but the world. The world is changing and we're all on the transition team. So as we do build back from COVID, let's do it so that we can be more resilient. Let's do it so that we're more committed and inclusive, financial inclusion, and that we build that into our very recovery efforts because we will be stronger. You can do that from whatever space and place you are at right now.
That's a great way to end the show. So thank you so much for being on today. And I know your time's very valuable. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.